AI never sleeps, and this week has been absolutely insane. We have an AI that can animate 3D models with just a text prompt, and it can be any object, not just a human character. We have a new open source GPT-4o image editor, which was actually trained on images from GPT-4o. We have a new open source AI music generator that can create full songs. This AI can create interactive 3D worlds like a video game, and this is the best quality one we've seen so far. We had the first ever humanoid robot soccer tournament, and this is completely autonomous. There weren't any humans remotely controlling these robots. Google releases an insane AI for understanding DNA. Hunyuan releases a tiny open source model that's as good as DeepSeek and OpenAI's o1. This AI can create 3D panoramic images and a lot more, so let's jump right in. First up, this AI is pretty interesting. It's called VMem, and this is a video generator that can create 3D worlds that are consistent. Now, I featured a ton of these 3D world generators on my channel before, but for almost all of them, they don't actually remember the scene. In other words, as you can see from this video in the middle, if you walk forward in the 3D world for a few steps and then walk back again, the scene could be completely different because it doesn't actually remember the scene from before. But this new AI VMem is able to solve this problem. So this takes in an input image to use as the first frame. Plus you can also control for how you want the camera to move in the scene by specifying key presses. From that, it would generate a video moving through the scene. And even if you walk backwards, everything remains consistent with the previous frames. So here's yet another example. Notice that without this VMem, then the AI doesn't actually remember what was in the previous frames. So it could not get these Chinese signs correct. But after VMem, it's able to remember what the scene actually looked like and regenerate it pretty well. Here's yet another example. So notice that if we pan to the right and then pan back left, VMem was able to accurately recreate this temple in the original image. Whereas if we don't have VMem, then it totally messes up the scene. Really quickly, here's the architecture behind it. So they used a special type of memory called surfel-based memory, which basically stores past video frames and their corresponding 3D geometry. This memory is used to generate new frames that are consistent with the past frames. It's like the AI remembers the entire scene. So if we decide to move back to a previous angle or perspective, it's able to recreate that very well. Anyways, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've actually released a free Hugging Face space for you to try this out online. So you can upload an image to use as the starting frame or choose from one of their examples. So let's try this living room. And then over here is where you can select how to move in the 3D scene. Let's get it to veer to the left for 20 degrees. And here is our result. So note that it only generates 5 frames like this, but you can always repeat this step again and again to generate a longer video. In addition to the Hugging Face space, they've also released the models and all the code for you to use locally. So if you click on this GitHub repo, it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. So if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this AI is pretty fascinating. It's called Dimension Reduction Attack, or DRA for short, and this can edit or create images not using an image generator, but a video generator, out of all things. And apparently using a video model can be quite effective for a variety of tasks, including colorization, sharpening, and deblurring. So here are some examples. First of all, if this is your input image, you can plug it through this video model to actually deblur the image. So after entering your text prompt and running this for a few steps, notice that it's able to deblur this image very well. Or here are some more examples. On the left is the original super blurry image, but after plugging it through this AI for many steps, notice that it's able to deblur and sharpen this very well. Here are some additional examples. It's pretty impressive how it was able to sharpen and add so much more detail to this, given that the original image is so blurry. Now, instead of sharpening or deblurring an image, this can also colorize a black and white image. So here we have the starting image. This is completely black and white, but after entering a prompt describing how you want to color this and plugging it through the AI, notice that it's able to colorize this very well. Or here's another example where on the left is the starting image, which is completely grayscale, but it's able to add color to this super accurately according to how you describe it in the prompt. Now, in addition to deblurring and colorizing an image, this can also act as a control net. So you can input something like a depth map, and then with a prompt, you can get it to generate the complete image based on this depth. So here are some examples. You can see after multiple steps, it's able to generate the final colored image very well based on the original depth map. Or here are some more examples. After plugging it through this AI and running it for multiple steps, it's able to generate a complete image based on the depth and your prompt. Now, instead of inputting a depth map and getting it to generate a complete image, you can do the reverse. So you can start with a complete image and get it to generate a depth map of the image like this. Very cool. Or here are some more examples. This can also handle in-painting and out-painting. So let's say you have this starting image where a part of it is removed. Well, you can plug it through this AI and with a prompt describe how you want to fill in the blanks. And here is what you get. So this is a super versatile and flexible image editor, even though technically this is a video model. Now, instead of in-painting, you can also out-paint or basically extend the edge of a photo. So let's say you're starting with the image on the left. Well, you can describe how you want to extend this, and after running it through this AI for several steps, here is what we get. Notice that it's able to preserve the original style of the image. You can also use this to change the image to another style. So let's say for your prompt, you input Bitmoji style, and on the left is the input image. After running it through a few steps, notice that it converts the image into something like this. You can also use this for reference to image. So let's say you input an image of an object or character. Well, with your prompt, you can basically take that object and apply it somewhere else. For example, you can swap the background or get the character to do something else. The nice thing is, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've released everything already, plus they also have a free Hugging Face space for you to try this out online. So here's what the interface looks like. You can choose from a ton of these different options. So for example, I'm going to upload this black and white family photo and I'm going to choose colorization. And then for the target prompt, I'm just going to put a family photo. Now you could specify even more details. So for example, the color of all their outfits. But for here, I'm just going to leave the creativity to it. And then down here, this is basically the number of steps you want it to go through before outputting your final image. Let's just leave it at the default of 50. All right, and here's what we get. So if we keep scrolling down, you can see it applying the colorization step after step. And after applying this for a ton of steps, you can see that the photo gradually becomes more colored. Anyways, there are a ton of different things you can do with this, so feel free to play around with this free Hugging Face space. Also, if you click on this GitHub repo, this contains all the instructions on how you can install this and run it locally on your computer. So if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this AI is super useful. It's called Anima-X, and this can animate 3D models with just a text prompt. Note that this does require that you input an articulated 3D mesh. This is basically an existing 3D model with a defined skeleton and joints. Then you would input your text prompt like "the boy jumps," and that's exactly what it does. It generates a video of the model moving according to your prompt. So here are some more examples. So this is quite a versatile tool. Note that the entire animation is 3D because you're inputting a 3D model. So if you get the laptop to close, here is what you get, and you can view this at different angles. Or here's a flag animation, and as you can see, it's moving pretty realistically, as if it's actually being blown by the wind. And as you can see, this also works for different animals. Again, note that you do need to input an articulated mesh first, which is an existing 3D model that already has the joints and the skeleton defined, so the AI knows how to move the model. And then here are some other characters for your reference. Note that it can even do more complex movements such as punching or even kicking. So traditionally, if you want to animate a 3D model, you need to do a lot of complex stuff to define the overall movement. But with this, you can just prompt it and it would animate a 3D model very accurately in just a few seconds. Really quickly, here's how it works. So you would input your articulated 3D mesh plus a prompt describing the action. And actually, it first generates a video and then extracts the pose sequences from the video like this, right? So it actually generates a video of this boy jumping, and then it extracts the skeleton of his jumping frame by frame. It then uses this sequence of pose skeletons to animate the underlying 3D model. A pretty clever workflow. Now, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they have released a GitHub repo, and on it there is a checklist for them to release the code and the model, plus the training dataset, which is fantastic. Anyways, for now, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Again, note that this tool requires an existing articulated 3D mesh, so the 3D model needs to have its joints defined already. So that's not really easy to work with. What if you just have a 3D model with no predefined joints and you want to animate that? Well, this brings us to this next AI, which is even better. So this is called AnimateAnyMesh, and it can animate any 3D model just with a text prompt. You don't need to have any predefined joints. So here are some examples. You can take a 3D model like this and then prompt it with the girl is dancing, and here is what you get. Note that it can create very smooth and realistic animations in just a few seconds. Here's an example where we animate this model of Link. So this AI can automatically detect, its joints, you can say, and determine how it should move the character. Here's another even trickier example. It's not really a regular character. This is a Jack in the Box with a spring coil, but it's able to detect this and animate it really realistically. So everything is physically accurate. Here's another example, so we can also get this dragon to flap its wings like this. Here is a pot of flowers. I mean, how the hell do you even animate a pot of flowers? But as you can see, this AI was able to pull it off very well. Here's another example of a different character, and note that it really doesn't matter what object or character you input. This AI is able to magically detect what it is and animate it really realistically. So here are some more examples for your reference. Even with abstract things like, I don't even know what the hell this is, or an entire scene like this, or even this shirt, it's able to animate these very well. Now, in case you're interested in the technical details, the key component behind the magic is this DieMesh VAE, which basically helps compress and reconstruct these 3D animations. And then it goes through this text-to-trajectory model, which uses what they call a rectified flow-based strategy to make sure the animations are smooth and realistic. Now, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they have released a GitHub repo, and on it, it says they will release the code and the dataset as soon as possible, so stay tuned for updates. For now, I'll link to this main page in the description below if you want to check out more examples. Speaking of AI tools, check out today's sponsor, Wegic. It's the world's first AI website team that auto-optimizes your site with data and auto-integrates payments. So what makes this stand out? Overall, it helps anyone transform ideas into income, fast and easy. If you want to build a website, you can just chat with it in any language and it would create and launch the site in just one click. Your website will go from 0 to live and it only takes like 60 seconds. Note that this is completely responsive and it looks great on mobile screens. And if you want to make your site more interactive and user-friendly, you can also use their AI form. Instead of filling out a boring form, visitors can just chat with the AI to leave information. You can use it for a Contact Us section or booking or collaboration requests. And here's the impressive part. Wegic analyzes how visitors interact with your site and then automatically improves the layout over time. It's like your site evolves and gets better without you lifting a finger. You can even add an AI-powered chatbot for a more user-friendly and interactive experience. And if you need to accept payment, just chat with Wegic and it'll automatically add an AI payment system to your website. Visitors can place orders right away, making it easy to start monetizing immediately. And the final and best part, Wegic now offers a free plan for one site publish and some free trial credits. Check out Wegic today in the description below. Next up, we have a new open source AI music generator. So this is called SongBloom, and this can generate full songs complete with vocals and instrumentals. So here are a few examples. Here's what it does. You first input the lyrics, which you want it to sing, plus you also need to input like a few seconds of a reference audio. And then this AI is basically going to create a new song with these lyrics in the style of your reference clip. So for example, let's play this reference clip. Note that after I post this to YouTube, some of these reference clips might be muted due to copyright issues. So that's the reference clip, and then here's the generated song in that style.
Rolling in the heat of a back road dream, whiskey nights and peach moonbeam. Porn starts slow like a lazy stream, warm rolling denim seams. Sweet night, no day in the air. Love soft groove in the midnight glare. Fingers trace the southern line, echoes hum like vintage wine. Barbecue smoke and backbeat soul stories live where the wild winds blow. In every sway, a tale unfolds. Southern gold that never gets old.
Very nice. Notice that it fully clones the voice of the original reference clip, plus the style is really similar. Also note that the tune in the intro is also the same as the instrumental over here, so it seems like it can maintain consistency throughout the song. Notice that, as with the other music generators, you can also add tags throughout your prompt, like intro, verse, chorus, and instrumental to give the AI more direction on how to structure this song. Here's another example. So here are the lyrics, and here is the reference clip. Alright, hopefully none of these are muted so you can actually hear the reference clip. But anyways, here is the AI generated song.
Can't you see the chains of injustice binding the poor hands and feet, where greed of the wealthy leaves a trail on empty streets so heavy and pale? Hear the rhythm of struggling hearts, echoes of voices long mute. The system turns its gears, the humble juggle seeds of revolt, taking root you for a new world, fair and sweet, where justice flows, free and complete.
Very nice. Again, notice that it 100% clones the voice of this original clip and gets him to sing this new song. Even though this reference clip is only like 10 seconds long, that's all it needed. So it's super impressive at voice cloning. Plus the style is also beautiful and the music sounds pretty clean. Notice that, again, the tune in this original intro is exactly the same as the instrumental in the middle here, so it's pretty good at maintaining consistency. I mean, with this AI, you can potentially just plug 10 seconds of a Taylor Swift song and get it to generate Taylor Swift singing a completely new song. Anyways, there are a ton of examples on this page, so in the interest of time, I'm not going to go over all of them, but note that in addition to English songs, this can also support other languages like Chinese. So let's just play one example. Here is the reference clip. Okay, and then here is the AI generation based on this reference clip.
倾诉难言藏。诗人似结束，情深似海洋。你我目光交，心事诉衷肠。时针似假意，情难自量。他也笑颜颜，我心却彷徨。情意深似海，却道是寻常。你我眼相望，情意难自量。时针似假意，情难自量。
Alright, so as you can see, it sounds really similar to the reference clip, and this does sound like a normal, Chinese pop song. Anyways, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've already released a GitHub repo, which, if you scroll down a bit, contains all the instructions on how you can download and run this locally on your computer. And if you've been following my channel, you'll note that I featured some other free and open source music generators before, such as Yue and Step Audio. Both of these are also pretty good, and you can also input lyrics and generate a complete song from that. If you're interested, see this video and this video where I go over how to install these on your computer. However, note that for all of these open source tools, including SongBloom, the quality just isn't as good as the top commercial models out there like Sunu or Udio or Refusion. Those are still a lot better and they sound a lot cleaner. But we are getting there. Hopefully in a few months, open source will catch up to these commercial models and we can generate full songs that are actually good quality completely offline. Anyways, if you're interested in reading further and listening to more examples, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this is super impressive. So this is called Hunyuan-GameCraft by the one and only Tencent Hunyuan, which also released one of the best video generators out there and 3D model generators. Anyways, back to Hunyuan-GameCraft, this can generate interactive game videos with high quality graphics and realistic movements. So this takes an input image to use as the first frame of the scene, plus a text prompt describing the scene. You would also feed it key presses, and the AI would animate the scene based on these controls. And then you can take the last frame of that generation and plug it back as the input, and rinse and repeat, and what you get is a continuous long video. You can iterate through this as many times as you want. So here are some more examples. Here is the text prompt. On the bottom right, you can see the keys that are being pressed. And note that this AI is able to respond and change the view based on these key presses. And the quality of this generation is actually pretty good compared with other alternatives I featured on my channel before. As you can see, this type of AI can potentially be used to generate video games in the future. Perhaps we no longer will have any video games with predefined worlds or designs or characters. Instead, you can just prompt an AI and it would generate everything on the fly. Now, I featured a ton of similar game generators before, such as Google's Game Engine, which can generate a real-time playable simulation of Doom, and also Microsoft's Diamond, which can generate a simulation of Counter-Strike. However, note that the quality of the generations from Hunyuan-GameCraft are just a lot better. Like, this is getting close to a AAA quality video game. Now, the nice thing about GameCraft is this can also remember the scene. So even if you walk forward or somewhere else and then you go back to the original location, GameCraft is able to preserve this original scene information. Whereas for other 3D world generators, they often don't actually remember the scene. So if you walk backwards, it could generate a completely different thing compared to what was there before. And note that for here, it can also generate scenes in various styles, including realistic and pixelated, or kind of this artsy pastel style. Now, in addition to first-person scenes, where you are the viewer, GameCraft is also able to generate third-person scenes, where you are viewing the player from behind. So here are some examples of that. And this can handle all sorts of scenarios, including driving, or this like first-person shooter game, to a warrior riding a horse, or to this sailboat. Whereas several other AI game generators are only fine-tuned on a specific game, so they can only generate that game. For this one, it can generate everything under the sun. And note that it doesn't even have to be first-person or third-person. And it doesn't have to just generate video game scenes. This is essentially a video generator, so you can generate any types of videos while controlling for how you want the camera to move in the video, just by specifying the key presses. So this is a super powerful and flexible tool. Now, if you scroll up to the top of the page, for now they've only released a technical paper. However, Hunyuan is known to open source most of their stuff, including Hunyuan, which is the video generator, and Hunyuan 3D, which is one of the best 3D model generators out there. So hopefully they are also going to release Hunyuan-GameCraft soon. This tool would be a game changer for video game design and creation. Anyways, for now, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Now, this isn't the only thing that Tencent Hunyuan is working on. So not only did they release this interactive video game generator, but they've also released a new open source model called Hunyuan A13B. Now, this is a mixture of experts model, so think of this as like a team of AI agents working together to help you solve a problem. Now, this model features a total of 80 billion parameters, but only 13 billion of these are active when you use it. So this makes it super efficient while being able to perform as well as much larger models. In fact, here are some benchmark scores across a variety of different topics, including math, science, coding, reasoning, instruction following, etc., etc. And then this last column is this new Hunyuan A13B. I wish they would bold the value that is the highest so that it's easier to find which model is the best performer. But anyways, from just a ballpark scan of this, you can see that Hunyuan A13B performs just as good as DeepSeek R1 or OpenAI's O1. This is super impressive considering it only has 13 billion active parameters, whereas these guys have hundreds of billions of parameters. Now, you can use this for free online right now, so simply click on this demo link to go to their Hunyuan online platform. Now, this is in Chinese, but if you're using Google Chrome, you can just right-click and click on Translate to English. Now, they have a few different settings which you might be familiar with. If you toggle this on, it will basically search the web and find you the most up-to-date information. They also have this Think Fast feature, which basically gets it to respond faster if your task doesn't really require deep reasoning. If you are trying to get it to solve a really complex math, science, or coding problem, then you can turn this off to get it to think for longer. And then under here, it also has this deep search capability, which is very similar to other deep search agents like OpenAI's Deep Research and Gemini Deep Research. So let's try this prompt. A 21-year-old college student comes to the clinic with sharp chest pain that worsens with deep breathing and improves when sitting forward. He recently had a cold, etc., etc. Vitals are stable, and the ECG shows, etc., etc. Please diagnose. Let's press generate and see what that gives us. So with most thinking models, you can see its thought process over here. So first, it's taking all the symptoms and figuring out the most probable explanation. And then it says, that makes me think of pericarditis, which has these symptoms. And then next, it looks at the ECG findings and also reinforces that it's likely pericarditis. It also thinks about other possibilities, such as STEMI or myocarditis, but that's more associated with etc., etc. So it concludes that pericarditis fits better with the given symptoms. And then the patient is young, which is also a common age for pericarditis. Anyways, afterwards, it gives us the diagnosis with some key clinical clues, and also it explains why it excluded other possibilities. And then here is the conclusion. So that's just one example of using Hunyuan A13B. Again, this is completely open source, and it's just as good as DeepSeek R1 or OpenAI's O1. On this GitHub repo, it contains all the instructions on how you can download and use this locally on your computer. Anyways, if you're interested in learning more, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this AI is pretty useful. So it's called DreamCube, and this can create 3D panoramic images with depth. So this takes in one image of a scene plus its corresponding depth map, and you would specify what else is around the scene using a text prompt. So for example, here you can specify that there will be a dining room with a window and curtains, and then there's also a room with a bed, desk, and pictures on a wall, etc., etc. And then it would use a diffusion model to basically generate what is called a cube map of the scene based on your text description. And then afterwards, you can also stitch this cube map together to create a 3D scene, which you can explore around like this. So here are some more demos. Let's say you input this image of this castle, and here is the corresponding depth map. Well, you can plug it into this AI, and then it would generate a 3D panoramic scene from that, which you can then explore around like this. How cool is that? So, this tech could be very useful for virtual reality or other immersive experiences. Or instead of garden, let's say you input this kitchen scene. Well, it can generate a panoramic image from that, which you can explore around, and here is what you get. Notice everything is very detailed and coherent. Or here's an example of another kitchen, and here is what you get. This would be a perfect tool for like VR tours for real estate or like interior design. Here's an example of a room, here's the original image and the original depth map, and if you move around the scene, here is what you get. Very nice. Or here's an example of a bedroom, and here is the resulting panoramic image. Anyways, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've already released the models on Hugging Face, plus if you click on this GitHub repo, it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. The nice thing is it uses a nice visual Gradio interface, so you don't have to work with raw code. Anyways, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, we have a new open source AI called LongWriter-Zero, and this can generate really long text like stories and articles from just a prompt. Now, we have a ton of models that can already do this, but the difference here is this can generate coherent text that's over 10,000 tokens, which is roughly 75,000 words. For the other leading AI models, if you try to get it to generate such long text, then usually the details aren't really consistent from start to end. Note that this is a fine-tune of Qwen 2.532b, which is an open source model by Alibaba. Now, this is just a medium-sized model with only 32 billion parameters, which is pretty small, but as you can see from the ELO score of these Writing Bench and Arena Write benchmarks, LongWriter-Zero even beats the best closed source models out there like GPT-4o or o1 or Claude Sonnet 4, as well as DeepSeek R1, and each of these are at least hundreds of billions of parameters. So the fact that this LongWriter-Zero is only 32 billion parameters is super impressive. Here are some other metrics. So for each pie chart, the section in blue is basically the percentage of times a human preferred the response of LongWriter-Zero compared to another AI model. So as you can see from all of these pie charts against all these different models, including Claude Sonnet 4, Gemini 2.5 Pro, and DeepSeek R1, you can see that LongWriter-Zero is preferred over half the time. So if you're looking to write really long text that's coherent, then LongWriter-Zero is currently your best option. And really quickly, here's how it works and how they trained it. So they pre-trained it on 30 billion tokens of like long-form books and technical reports. This is basically a ton of data. They then fine-tuned this further using reinforcement learning with 3 reward models. The first one is called length reward model, which makes sure the output is long enough. So it's rewarded if it outputs a long answer. It also has a writing reward model, which scores its fluency, coherence, and helpfulness. So again, the AI model gets a higher reward if it was able to generate a result that's fluent and coherent and helpful. It also has this format reward, which helps keeps its responses structured. So the AI is incentivized to output structured outputs like this and also avoid repeating content. And as with all of the top thinking models out there, LongWriter-Zero was also prompted to explicitly reflect before answering. So this encourages deep thinking, which allowed it to output better responses. Anyways, the models are all open source and out already. So on this page, it gives you all the instructions on how to download this and run it locally on your computer. If you're interested, I'll link to this main page in the description below. In humanoid robot news, in the past few weeks we've had a ton of robot events, including a humanoid robot marathon and a robot kickboxing tournament, both of which I mentioned on my channel before. Well, this week, Beijing will host the first ever autonomous humanoid robot soccer match. It's going to be a team of 3 robots against 3 robots. Now, this event consists of 4 teams, including those from Tsinghua University and Beijing Information Science and Tech University. Note that here, the robots were all trained using deep reinforcement learning, and they can autonomously kick, chase, and maneuver the ball without any human guidance. And this is super impressive. This is way different from the kickboxing match which we saw a few weeks ago, where all the actions of the robots were actually teleoperated. In other words, someone was controlling these robots from the sidelines. But here in the soccer match, no one is remotely controlling these robots. They are all acting autonomously, and through reinforcement learning, their goal is to score the most points. Now, this is actually going to be the first test event for what they call the World Humanoid Robot Games, which is set to take place in mid-August of this year. Think of it as like a robot Olympics, which is pretty exciting. Anyways, that's all the information we have for now. I'll keep you posted once we learn more about this event. But let me know in the comments below, would you be interested in watching a robot Olympics? Now, in the past few weeks, Google has been on fire. They've released a ton of game-changing products, such as Veo 3, which can directly generate videos with audio, as well as an AI that can self-evolve and come up with a ton of scientific and math breakthroughs, as well as another AI that can help predict tropical cyclones, just to name a few examples. Well, this week they continue to release some insane stuff. So here we have AlphaGenome, which is basically an AI that can help us understand DNA. Now here's a brief background on what DNA even is. This is basically a helix structure consisting of 2 strands, and each strand is basically a really long string of nucleotides, and each nucleotide can have one of 4 bases, G, C, A, or T. So you can think of DNA as basically just a really long string of code that are either G, C, A, or T. Now, historically, we have no idea what most of these sequences do or what they mean. But here, Google has trained this AI called AlphaGenome to basically take a really long DNA sequence, up to 1 million letters, and from that, it can predict thousands of molecular properties, including details about how that DNA is used in the body. It's especially good at analyzing non-coding regions of DNA, which make up about 98% of the DNA. So these sections, as far as we know, don't really serve any purpose. And historically, it's been really hard to interpret what these regions even do, even though they make up like over 90% of the DNA. The model can also predict how even tiny changes or mutations in the DNA might affect its output or gene activity. And this can be really helpful in explaining the genetic causes of a lot of diseases. AlphaGenome can also spot errors in RNA splicing. This is a process where RNA is cut and rejoined, and basically, in simple terms, this is important because mistakes here can also lead to diseases, such as spinal muscular atrophy and cystic fibrosis. So if we understand how this works, it can give us clues on how we can potentially cure or prevent these diseases. The nice thing is this doesn't just work with one type of cell. So here it says AlphaGenome is able to interpret hundreds of human and mouse cell types and tissues. So, this is actually huge because we still don't know a lot about DNA and how it works. But if you've been following my channel, you should know that AI models are really good at pattern recognition. So it's really good at finding underlying patterns and relationships, even if it's really complicated. So by training this AI to interpret DNA, maybe we could uncover a ton of things that we don't know before. And the nice thing is this is available already. So you can access this via their AlphaGenome API for non-commercial research. And they even say that they're gonna release the model in the future. Anyways, if you're interested in learning more, I'll link to this main page in the description below. In addition to AlphaGenome, Google also released Gemini CLI this week. This is a free and open source AI agent that works directly in your command line or terminal. And this makes it easier for developers to write or debug or manage code locally. So for example, you can just pull this up in your terminal and then ask Gemini to code things or fix bugs directly within your local folders. Or you can even get it to create images and videos using their Imagen and VO3 MCP. It's basically like an API that connects to Google's image and video generators. So for example here, just by prompting it, you can get it to make a short video of a ginger cat's adventures around Australia. And because this is an agent, it can automatically do the entire thing for you. You don't have to prompt it scene by scene. So as you can see, it's actually first using Google's Imagen to generate an image of this ginger cat in various scenes in Australia, and then it's using VO3 to generate videos based on that image as the starting frame. And it will rinse and repeat this, and in the end you'll get a full long video with multiple scenes. Note that again, because this is an agent, it's doing this all autonomously. You can do all of this just by typing a prompt in natural language. The nice thing is this Gemini CLI is fully open source under the Apache 2 license, which has very minimal restrictions, like you can even use this for commercial purposes. And by default, this uses Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is Google's best model yet, and you get 1,000 requests per day for free. So if you're a developer and if you want to get an AI agent on your terminal using the best AI model out there, Gemini 2.5 Pro, for free, definitely take advantage of this. I'm not sure if they will continue offering this for free for long. Now, in addition to working with an AI on your terminal, which honestly I'm not personally a fan of, you can also use their Gemini Code Assist, which is an AI assistant that lives directly in VS Code, as you can see here. So this is essentially the same thing as Cursor or Windsurf. But here again, they are offering this for free. So, if you don't want to pay for Cursor or Windsurf, you can just use this for free, and it offers very similar capabilities. Anyways, if you're interested in learning more, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Here's another update by Google. So they finally released Imagen 4 via the Gemini API as well as Google's AI Studio. Now, if you're not familiar with AI Studio, this is the all-in-one platform where you can use the best models from Google, including Gemini 2.5 Pro plus the Gemini 2.0 image editor. You can also talk to an AI voice in real time, and even share your screen and ask it questions. But this week they've released Imagen 4, so how you can access this in AI Studio is simply click on Generate Media in this left column, and here is where you can use the latest Imagen 4. So let's click on this, and as you can see over here is where we have Imagen 4 and Imagen 4 Ultra. The rest of these settings are pretty self-explanatory, so here's the number of results, here's the aspect ratio. Let's try this out. First, I'm going to generate a low-quality amateur selfie photo. Let's see what that gives us. And here is what we get. This is indeed quite a low-quality amateur selfie photo. In fact, everything looks super blurry and unpolished. Next, let's try something trickier. So I'm going to get it to generate a 4-panel comic on how to stay healthy. For panel 1, the character should drink a glass of water, and there should be a text bubble with this text. And then for panel 2, the person should be walking outside with the text move every day. And then here is panel 3 with the text eat real food. Here is panel 4 with the person sleeping with the text get enough sleep. Let's click run and see what that gives us. And here is what we get. So as you can see, it's really good at generating text and complicated images like this with multiple elements or panels. So, this is a legit competitor to GPT-4o. Or let's try another tricky example. Here the prompt is an isometric 3D scene of a bedroom. There is a man sitting on a red chair at a wooden desk, working on his laptop. There's a white empty bookshelf. A pet cat is curled up on a gray bed with white pillows. Beside the bed is a nightstand with a lamp and alarm clock. The wall is teal. There is a window with white curtains. There are some houseplants and an acoustic guitar hanging on the wall. Let's see if it can generate an image with all these elements. Alright, and here is what we get. So this is an isometric 3D scene. There is a man sitting on a red chair at a wooden desk. He is working on a laptop. The bookshelf is not empty though, so gotta take some points off for that. There is a pet cat curled on a gray bed with white pillows. Beside the bed there is a nightstand with a lamp and alarm clock. The wall is teal, there is a window with white curtains, and there are houseplants and an acoustic guitar hanging on the wall. So it got most of it besides the empty bookshelf. I mean, this is a completely free image generator which you can use, so not too bad. Anyways, if you're interested in using this, I'll link to AI Studio in the description below. They have so many other awesome features here, like generating some super realistic text-to-speech, as well as chatting with an AI voice in real time, so definitely check out this platform if you haven't already. Next up, we have a new open source image generator, and this is called ShareGPT-4o Image. In fact, it works just like OpenAI's GPT-4o image generator. And you know, the funny thing is, how they made this is they trained this AI on a huge dataset of 92,000 images that were generated by GPT-4o's image generator, including 45,000 text-to-image examples and 46,000 image-to-image examples. So, you know, they're kind of just mass-producing data from GPT-4o and then using that data to train their own model. Does that count as stealing? Let me know in the comments below. I'm not sure if Sam Altman is too happy about that. Anyways, the base model, which they trained this on, is called Janus 4o. And like GPT-4o, this is also a multimodal model that can understand both text and images, so it can also do image generation and editing. So here are some examples of the dataset that they created. These are basically images that they generated with GPT-4o. So as you can see, it's quite a diverse set of prompts that span different artistic styles and compositions and subjects. And then here are some examples of image to image. And the crazy thing is they've actually released this dataset for us to use. So again, the total amount of samples is over 92,000, and you can actually use this dataset of GPT-4o generations to perhaps train your own image generator. So here are some example generations with this new ShareGPT-4o. So at the top here is just the base Janus model, and after they fine-tuned it on this GPT-4o image dataset, notice that the original Janus generation looks absolutely awful, but with this fine-tune it looks a lot better. Now overall, this isn't like a god tier image generator just because the base model Janus kind of sucks compared to other alternatives like Flux and Hydream. But this training dataset of 92,000 images could be useful. Anyways, if you want to try this out, on their GitHub repo, it contains all the instructions on how you can download and run this on your computer. Plus, like I said, you can also download the full dataset of 92,000 images and use that to train your own image generator. Anyways, if you're interested, I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. And that sums up all the highlights in AI this week. Let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Which piece of news was your favorite, and which tool are you most looking forward to trying out? As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.